Marcus Chen stood at the pinnacle of his success, a self-made tech entrepreneur whose company had just gone public. His upcoming wedding to socialite Victoria Hartwell promised to be the event of the season, a spectacular display of wealth and status at a historic estate. When he decided to invite his ex-girlfriend Sarah Mitchell, the woman who had left him years ago when he was struggling, Marcus thought he was orchestrating the perfect moment of vindication. He imagined her arriving in modest clothes, witnessing everything she had walked away from, realizing the terrible mistake she had made. But life rarely follows the scripts we write in our heads, and sometimes the truths we discover change not just a single moment, but the entire trajectory of our understanding. The invitation arrived at Sarah Mitchell's small apartment on a Tuesday morning, nestled between bills and promotional flyers. She stared at the heavy cardstock, embossed with gold lettering that announced the union of Marcus Chen and Victoria Hartwell. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the elegant script, memories flooding back like a dam had burst somewhere in her chest. 7 years. It had been 7 years since she had last seen Marcus. 7 years since she had made the hardest decision of her life. The invitation felt like a message in a bottle from another universe, one where the past refused to stay buried beneath the daily routines of survival. Sarah set the invitation on her small kitchen table and poured herself a cup of coffee. Through her window, she could see the city awakening. People rushing to their jobs, to their lives, to their futures. She had built a quiet existence here, one that most people wouldn't understand, one that required explanations she had grown tired of giving. The wedding was in 3 weeks. Part of her wanted to throw the invitation away, to pretend it had never arrived. But another part, a part she thought she had silenced long ago, whispered that perhaps she owed Marcus something. Closure, maybe, or truth. Marcus Chen stood in his corner office, 60 stories above the city, looking at the guest list for his wedding. His assistant had just confirmed that Sarah Mitchell had RSVP'd yes. A smile played at his lips, though it wasn't entirely pleasant. "She's actually coming," he said to his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. His business partner, David, looked up from his laptop. "Your ex? Man, that's cold. Victoria know about this?" "Victoria suggested it," Marcus replied, which was partly true. Victoria had suggested inviting exes to show how secure and magnanimous they were. Marcus had taken that suggestion and run with it in his own direction. "Why would you want her there? Seems like asking for drama." Marcus turned from the window. "You didn't know me back then, David. I was nobody, working 2 jobs, living in a studio apartment that had roaches and a radiator that barely worked. Sarah was with me through the early startup days, when I was coding 18 hours a day, eating ramen, pitching to investors who laughed me out of their offices. So she supported you. That's nice. Until she didn't." Marcus's voice hardened. "The moment things got really tough, when we hit that rough patch where I had to max out my credit cards just to keep the servers running, she left, said she couldn't do it anymore, that she needed stability, that she was sorry, but she had to think about her own future." David whistled low. "That's rough, man. You know what the kicker was? 3 months after she left, we got our Series A funding. 6 months after that, we were profitable. Everything I had told her would happen, happened. Just not with her by my side. And now you want her to see what she missed out on." Marcus smiled again, and this time it was definitely not pleasant. "I want her to walk into that ceremony and see everything. The estate, the 500 guests, the ice sculptures, the orchestra, Victoria in her custom Vera Wang dress. I want her to understand, in the most visceral way possible, exactly what door she closed." David closed his laptop. "Be careful, Marcus. Revenge is a funny thing. Sometimes it doesn't taste as sweet as you think it will." The 3 weeks passed in a blur of final preparations. Marcus threw himself into work and wedding details with equal intensity, while Sarah found herself doing something she hadn't done in years, shopping for a dress. She stood in a department store, running her fingers over fabrics she couldn't afford, before settling on something simple but elegant from a consignment shop. The night before the wedding, Sarah sat in her apartment, the dress hanging on her closet door. She pulled out an old shoebox from under her bed, one she hadn't opened in years. Inside were photographs, letters, ticket stubs from movies she and Marcus had seen together. Evidence of a love that had been real, even if it hadn't survived. There was one photograph she lingered over. Marcus and her at Coney Island, both of them laughing, his arm around her shoulders, the Ferris wheel behind them. They had taken the subway there because neither of them had a car. They had split a hot dog because money was tight, and they had been happy, genuinely happy, in a way that had nothing to do with wealth or status. She remembered the night she had left him. He thought it was about money, about her lack of faith in his dreams. He had said as much when she was walking out the door, his voice raw with anger and pain. But the truth was so much more complicated, so much harder to explain. Some truths required context that words couldn't capture, and sometimes silence felt kinder than explanation. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, as if Marcus's success extended even to control over the elements. The Ashford estate, a sprawling property with manicured gardens and a mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from a European countryside, began filling with guests by late afternoon. Sarah arrived in an Uber, watching as luxury cars pulled up to drop off guests in designer clothes dripping with jewelry. She felt like an intruder at first, but the invitation was real in her clutch purse, proof that she had been asked to witness this moment. The ceremony was scheduled for sunset in the garden. Sarah found her seat, noting that it was in the back, far from the family sections. That felt appropriate somehow. She was a ghost here, a remnant of a past that Marcus had moved beyond. As she waited, she overheard conversations around her, talk of stock options and Mediterranean vacations, of private schools and summer homes. These were Marcus's people now, the social stratosphere he had climbed into through brilliance and determination. Then the music changed, and everyone stood. Victoria appeared at the end of the aisle, and Sarah had to admit she was stunning. The dress must have cost more than Sarah made in 6 months. Victoria glided toward the altar where Marcus waited, and for a moment, Sarah could see the triumph in his posture, the satisfaction of a man who had conquered every goal he had set. The ceremony was beautiful in the way that unlimited budgets could create. No detail had been overlooked, no expense spared. As the couple exchanged vows, Sarah found herself studying Marcus's face. He looked successful, confident, victorious. But did he look happy? She wasn't sure. The reception was held in a grand ballroom that had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Ice sculptures, floral arrangements that must have required a greenhouse to produce, a live orchestra, and a 5-tier cake that was a work of art. Sarah found her table, again placed far from the important guests, and tried to make herself small. Dinner was served, course after elaborate course, paired with wines Sarah couldn't pronounce. She picked at her food, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. What was she doing here? What purpose did her presence serve except to feed Marcus's need for vindication? Then came the speeches. Victoria's father spoke about legacy and partnership. Marcus's business partner gave a humorous toast about the journey from startup to success. And then Marcus himself stood, champagne glass in hand, and Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," Marcus began, his voice amplified by the microphone. "This day represents more than just the union of Victoria and myself. It represents the culmination of a journey that began years ago, when I was nobody with nothing but a dream and a laptop." He paused, letting the words sink in. Sarah felt eyes turning toward her. Someone had clearly told people who she was. Along the way, I learned that success requires unwavering commitment. That you can't build something great with people who don't believe in the vision, who abandon ship when the waters get rough. The room was silent. Sarah felt her face flush. "But I also learned," Marcus continued, his voice softening slightly, "that the journey reveals character, both in ourselves and in others. And sometimes—" He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes had found Sarah in the crowd, and something in his expression changed. The triumph seemed to drain away, replaced by something else. Confusion. Recognition. Victoria touched his arm gently, a prompt to continue. Marcus blinked, seemed to shake himself, and finished the speech with generic thanks and toasts. But the moment had fractured something. Sarah saw it in his face, a crack in the armor of certainty. After the speeches, Sarah excused herself and stepped out onto a terrace overlooking the gardens. The sun had set completely now, and the estate was lit with thousands of tiny lights that made everything look magical. She leaned against the stone balustrade and closed her eyes. "Sarah," she turned, Marcus stood in the doorway, his bow tie slightly loosened, a champagne glass still in his hand. Marcus, congratulations. It was a beautiful ceremony. Why did you come? The question wasn't hostile, just genuinely curious. Sarah considered lying, but what was the point? I'm not sure, honestly. Maybe to see if you were happy. Maybe to, I don't know, close a chapter properly. Marcus stepped onto the terrace, keeping distance between them. Did you get what you came for? Seeing all this? He gestured back at the ballroom. Is that why you invited me? To show me what I walked away from? The silence stretched between them. Finally, Marcus said, Yes, I wanted you to see it, to understand what you gave up. Sarah nodded slowly. I understand why you'd feel that way. I left without explanation. That wasn't fair to you. No, it wasn't. His voice was harder now. I deserved to know why. After everything we had been through together, I deserved more than a note saying you needed to find your own path. You're right. You did deserve more. Sarah took a breath. Can I tell you now? The real reason? Marcus studied her face. In the light from the ballroom, she looked different than he remembered. Older, yes, but also something else. There was a depth to her expression that hadn't been there before, a weight of experience that spoke of battles fought far from his sight. I'm listening. Sarah pulled her phone from her purse and opened her photo gallery. She scrolled for a moment, then handed the phone to Marcus. Her name is Lily. She's 6 years old. Marcus stared at the screen. A little girl with Sarah's eyes smiled back at him, sitting in what looked like a hospital room, tubes and wires attached to her small body. I don't understand, Marcus said slowly. My sister Emily got pregnant 7 years ago, unplanned, with a guy who disappeared the moment he found out. She was scared, didn't know what to do. I was the only family she had left after our parents died. Marcus's mind was racing, trying to piece together a puzzle he hadn't known existed. Emily developed complications during the pregnancy, severe preeclampsia. The doctors said she needed complete bed rest for months, couldn't work, could barely move. Someone had to take care of her, had to cover the medical bills, had to prepare for the baby. Why didn't you tell me? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. Because you were at the most critical point of your startup. You had maxed out your credit cards. You were sleeping 4 hours a night. You were so close to either breakthrough or breakdown. I couldn't ask you to support 3 people instead of 1. I couldn't let my family's crisis destroy your dream. Sarah's voice remained steady, but her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I got a second job, then a third. I worked 16-hour days. I was with Emily through the delivery, which was touch and go. They had to do an emergency C-section. Lily was born 2 months premature, spent 10 weeks in the NICU. The bills were astronomical. Marcus handed back the phone, but his hand was shaking. Emily survived the delivery but developed postpartum complications. She was in and out of the hospital for the next year. I became Lily's primary caregiver, a 6-month-old baby with medical needs, while also working enough to keep us all afloat. Emily? Marcus asked. Sarah's face clouded. She passed away 2 years ago. Complications from the pregnancy that were never fully resolved. So now it's just Lily and me. Marcus felt like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. The narrative he had constructed, the story of betrayal and vindication, crumbled like sand. Sarah, I had no idea. How could you? I made sure you didn't. I thought I was being noble, saving you from having to choose between your dream and me. Maybe I was just a coward who couldn't face asking for help. Why didn't you reach out later, after I'd made it? After the funding came through? Sarah smiled sadly. By then you had moved on. You had built your empire, found your people, created this life. What was I going to do? Show up with a child that wasn't mine and medical bills and baggage? You deserved happiness without my complications. That wasn't your choice to make, Marcus said, but there was no anger in his voice now, only sadness. No, you're right, it wasn't. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I left without explanation. I'm sorry I let you believe I didn't have faith in you. The truth is, I had complete faith in you. I just didn't have faith that I could be the partner you needed while dealing with my own situation. They stood in silence, the sounds of the party floating out from the ballroom. Music, laughter, the clink of glasses, the celebration of Marcus's new life, now shadowed by the revelation of old truths. How is she? Marcus asked finally. Lily? Sarah's face transformed when she smiled. She's amazing. Smart, funny, resilient. She's had to deal with more medical issues than any kid should, but she faces it all with this incredible courage. She's in a special school program for kids with chronic health conditions. She loves to paint, wants to be an artist someday. And you? How are you managing? We manage. I work as a medical billing specialist now, which is ironic given how many medical bills I've dealt with personally. The hours are flexible, so I can be there for Lily's appointments and school events. We're not rich, but we're okay. We have each other. Marcus looked back through the glass doors at his wedding reception. Victoria was dancing with her father, surrounded by hundreds of guests. Everything he had wanted, everything he had worked for, was right there. But something felt hollow now, like a beautiful facade with nothing behind it. I invited you here to hurt you, Marcus admitted. I wanted you to feel small and regretful. I wanted vindication for the pain you caused me. I know, Sarah said gently. I saw it in the invitation, in the seat placement, in your speech. I came anyway because I thought maybe I owed you that. You didn't owe me pain. Maybe not. But maybe you needed to see me, and I needed to tell you the truth. Maybe we both needed closure that was honest, not based on misunderstanding. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. I don't know what to do with this information. I'm getting married. Tonight is supposed to be the happiest night of my life, and you've just turned my entire understanding of the past upside down. You don't have to do anything with it, Sarah said. Go back to your wedding. Dance with your wife. Celebrate your success. You earned all of this, Marcus. You worked hard. You were brilliant. You deserve every bit of it. Do I? Because right now it feels like I built my empire on resentment towards someone who was actually sacrificing everything for her family. You built your empire on your own talent and determination. What you felt about me was separate from that. Marcus looked at her directly now. Are you happy, Sarah? Honestly. She considered the question carefully. I'm not happy the way you are, with wealth and success and grand celebrations. But when Lily laughs, when she shows me a new painting, when she has a good day health-wise, I feel something that might be deeper than happiness. Purpose, maybe. Love, certainly. I wouldn't trade her for anything, not even the life I might have had with you. The door to the terrace opened, and Victoria appeared. She looked between Marcus and Sarah, her expression unreadable. They're about to cut the cake, Victoria said. Her voice was pleasant, but controlled. We should get back. Of course, Marcus said. He looked at Sarah one last time. Thank you for telling me, for being honest. Thank you for listening. And congratulations again, truly. Sarah watched them walk back into the ballroom together. Victoria's hand was on Marcus's arm, proprietary and confident. Sarah felt a pang of something that might have been loss, or might have been relief. Perhaps it was both. She stayed on the terrace for a few more minutes, breathing in the night air, before making her way back inside. She found her purse, said quiet goodbyes to no one in particular, and slipped out of the reception. The Uber ride home gave her time to think. Had she done the right thing, telling Marcus the truth? Part of her felt lighter, unburdened by the secret she had carried. Another part felt exhausted, as if she had climbed a mountain only to find another mountain beyond it. Her phone buzzed. A text from the babysitter. Lily's asleep. All good here. No rush. Sarah smiled. Home. That's where she needed to be. In the ballroom, Marcus cut the cake with Victoria, smiled for photographs, danced the obligatory dances. But his mind was elsewhere, replaying the conversation with Sarah, rearranging 7 years of memories with new context. Victoria noticed, of course. Are you okay? She whispered during their dance. Just a lot on my mind. Want to talk about it? Marcus looked at his new wife. She was beautiful, accomplished, connected in ways that had helped his business expand. She was a perfect partner in many ways, but did they have the kind of relationship where he could tell her what Sarah had just told him? Did she know him well enough to understand why it mattered? Not tonight, he said. Tonight is about celebration. Victoria smiled, satisfied with the answer, and they continued dancing. The reception wound down eventually. Guests departed. The orchestra packed up. The ice sculptures melted into puddles. Marcus and Victoria retired to the estate's master suite, which would be theirs for the weekend before they left for their honeymoon in Bora Bora. Victoria fell asleep quickly. exhausted from the day's events. Marcus lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about sliding doors and alternate paths. What if Sarah had told him the truth 7 years ago? Would he have risen to the occasion, found a way to support her and her sister and the baby? Or would the weight of it all have crushed both his dreams and their relationship? He thought about Sarah in her modest dress, sitting in the back at his wedding, carrying the weight of her story in silence. He had wanted her to feel small, but she had seemed anything but. There was a dignity in her that he didn't remember from before, earned through years of sacrifice he couldn't imagine. His phone was on the nightstand. He picked it up and found himself searching for her name. He typed out a message. "Thank you for coming tonight, and for everything you didn't say 7 years ago. I understand now." He stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. What good would it do? The past was past, and they had both moved forward, even if their paths had been vastly different. But understanding had replaced resentment, and that felt like its own kind of victory. In the weeks that followed, Marcus found himself thinking often about that conversation on the terrace. The vindication he had sought never materialized, because the premise had been false. There was no victory in Sarah's regret, because she had nothing to regret. Not really. She had made impossible choices in impossible circumstances, and she had survived them with grace he was only beginning to appreciate. His lavish wedding continued to be featured in society magazines, a testament to his success. But the moment that stayed with him, that changed something fundamental in his understanding of love and loyalty and sacrifice, was the moment when Sarah handed him her phone and showed him the real reason behind her leaving. Sometimes the truth doesn't set us free. Sometimes it simply replaces one burden with another, trading righteous anger for humbling understanding. Marcus had invited his ex to be embarrassed, but in the end, he was the one who learned a lesson about assumptions, about the stories we tell ourselves, about the complexity of human choices made in the shadows we never see.